Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first webcast here for the World Heritage Healing Center. My name is Jona Bryndis, and we have an exciting panel here today. David Thompson, founder of the
everybody.
World
Thanks
Heritage
for
Healing
tuning
Center.
in and listening to us. It's great to be here.
And Lynn Teachworth from Orlando, Florida.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And Jeff Casper from Colorado, USA.
Hello, everyone.
And myself, also from Colorado, USA. This being the first one out of a whole series of webcasts, I want to really quick introduce the project here sort of in its essence, and then we're going to move on to the vision that we all share here, that each and every one of us shares, and the angle, and also sort of the speciality that we bring in as contributors. So the World Heritage Healing Center will embody a new paradigm for health. This new paradigm will facilitate a change in our collective expectation of health to focus on well-being, on radical well-being as a possibility for everybody instead of focusing on sickness. Health will not just be the absence of obvious symptoms of illness, but a feeling of abundant energy and the experience of every part of us being in coherent communication with every other part. In other words, a holistic approach. This is a new paradigm for health, a state of radical well-being. And the reason for building the World Heritage Healing Center and founding this project here is to ground this aspiration and to have a focus in making the ideal a reality. So these webcasts here will give you an update of where we are at with our project and where we want to go next. Our most important panel guest here is David Thompson. David has a history of physiotherapy. He was trained at the St. George's University of London. He is a state-registered physiotherapist and a member of the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy in the UK. David is the embodiment of the World Heritage Healing Center idea. Myself, I'm an energy healer. I founded transCODES, which is an energy healing training platform. I mostly bring in the expertise of training, and I'm currently working on my PhD in metaphysics. So Lynn has been in the body work profession since 1991. Lynn is best known for working with sports injuries, chronic pain, and sports performance. Lynn has over 2,000 professional athlete clients in the sports world, including the NBA, NFL, PGA, LPGA, ATP, soccer, track and field, pro water skiing, and wakeboarding. And our last panel guest here today is Jeff. Jeff Casper is known for being an energy clearing specialist, or etheric surgeon as many call it. His clients are from all over the world and taught how to avoid complex energetic blocks that can inhibit healing. So yeah, that's quite a bit of expertise here in this panel. Lynn, I would love to ask you first, what drew you to the World Heritage Center project? What made you want to join this?
Well, I'll try and keep it brief, but it's kind of a long answer, actually. After knowing David and doing some, distance sessions with David, I really loved his attitude about what he was trying to create. And I have, taught for 15 years with different energy medicine protocols and different things, and I felt for me personally it was time to go out and do my own business. So my wife and I started Trunamics, which is the truth about the dynamics of the human body, because it seemed to me in the world of energy and like any technique that you're working with the body, there tends to be a lot of egos that build up and not a lot of truth and results. And so I really dove into like Ewan method and source point therapy and those techniques like that go to the deepest levels of the energetic system, and really started seeing results when I realized that not everybody has the total answer. And so in the last, or let me preface that by saying the last year and a half, I became a gift fellow, which is the most advanced functional biomechanics training you can get. And to be able to look at how all three levels of the body work together functionally, psychologically, and structurally, and to start teaching that and putting that out there, and then just coincidentally meeting David and starting to talk about what he was trying to create. It's like, wow, I just kind of left my covering of energy, and here's somebody that's starting something that's way bigger, and it's not about ego. It's actually about getting people better and incorporating other people's opinions and their viewpoints where everybody's equal in that. I mean, to me, that was an outstanding idea and came along perfect for what I wanted to be a part of in supporting everybody out there that's doing great work.
Awesome. Jeff, what attracted you in the World Heritage Healing project idea?
I think the biggest thing, and Lynn touched on this as well, is that it's the combination. It's taking all the potential levels, all the potential practices that are out there, and creating a level playing field and talking about things and finding out what's the best and how to combine them all into, like, again, Lynn pointed out, mind, body, spirit, hitting all three areas. And really, because the more levels you can hit, the more levels you can touch with working with someone to help them heal or change, the higher potential you have for that. So that's really what I saw in that, was the ability to have an open forum and then create something from that that could allow multiple levels to be hit. That was the beautiful part of it. So that's really what got me.
Yeah.
That was my short answer.
And my short answer is, the moment I heard about the World Heritage Healing Center, I knew that this was it. I had several visions long time ago, more than a decade ago, about something like this, bringing this into the physical with transCODES. I'm actually working on the exact same thing. I'm bringing healing professionals from all different disciplines together. I teach them, I train them, and we have a huge community that we've created here over the years. So for me, the World Heritage Healing Center idea hit home right away. I had the exact same idea, just in a much smaller scale, and I was immediately on fire and contacted you, David.
Yeah, so, you did. You jumped right on board. It was really nice and very generous of you, and you've already given so much, so thank you.
So this leads me to David Thompson, the founder of the idea. And David, I think I can speak for the audience here. We all kind of came here to hear mostly your vision of this. Okay, what is your vision of the World Heritage Healing Center project? Would you like to share this with us?
And I would love to. And thank everyone for coming again and listening. And we've got a really credible team already involved. But the vision is to build a healing center of such scale and grandiose architecture that it's a tourist destination in its own right. So it doesn't just feel good going there, but it looks amazing as well. And because it's got such an awe-inspiring atmosphere, the healing potential and the energy associated with it will make you feel better just thinking about going there. And your healing will start as soon as you have that thought about wanting to go there to get better. And you may not go there for several years, and this may not be built for decades. But changing our attitude to health and what we think is possible is a big concept, and we need a big physical structure to ground it, which is why it has to be World Heritage in its size and status, and also longevity, because it's also asking a legacy question, which is, what do you want to leave for your children? But beyond that, what if you could leave something of such a positive nature that it lasted not for 1 or 2 generations, but for several hundred generations, and was still being used as the building will be and is intended to be for the same purpose that it was built for. So if the great pyramids of... Sorry.
Can I ask you something here? Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
There's a question here that I'm asked over and over again, and this is, you talking about an architectural structure, you talking about a center or location. Could you expand on whether this is one location sort of for the entire world, or are we talking about a center as far as like like something like a hospital, or are we talking about in a whole entire network of buildings or institutions?
Yeah, so now we're really coming on to the how we're going to get there. And in order to fund the building of such a massive structure, we're going to have other smaller centres, and there will be lots of them, and there'll be one near you. We're going to start in London, make the mistakes with that one, learn our lessons, but then very much like a Starbucks model, be able to replicate it and roll it out very quickly, so that in your local town you have access to practitioners who base their work on the ethos of the project. So it's really to ground the ethos and make it a possibility to have this massive structure which makes you feel better just going there, but we can start straight away and we can change our practice right now. And Lynn's Trunamics course is exactly in line with the thinking of what I would like to see happen in the whole of medicine. So not just with physiotherapy or osteopathy or chiropractic and integrating the levels from that perspective, but from all of our medical care and all of our own healing. So the smaller centres will be run as businesses, but they're not there to make significant profit. They're there to generate just enough as a social business, which they contribute back to the community in which they're based, and give a little bit to the charity, which is then going to build the final centre, whenever that's going to be. But it's such a huge shift in our attitude that we need something big to ground it, and that's why it needs to be a building of a World Heritage size and status.
So it's not just a building, it's a whole new way of approaching healthcare, and maybe so that it can become kind of like a brand name for holistic health, for integrative health, and signifying the approach of a practitioner that can be anywhere in the world, who is part of this this organization.
Yeah. And this concept of distance healing as a reality. So you don't actually have to be with the practitioner in person. You can do a distance healing session. But for some ailments, some symptoms, you do need that personal touch, and you do need to be hands-on. So having centers is important, but also realizing that we're embodying quantum physics principles with medical practice, and Ayurvedic principles, and traditional Chinese medicine, and all our understanding of the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects of our body, and the other etheric layers. So we can address you not just as a human of a collection of parts and systems, but as a human energetic being. And your practitioner, your general practitioner, will understand the human energetic being, not just the human body. And so meet you from a perspective where his first port of call is not just drugs or surgery or physio if you're lucky.
I think there's going to be a lot of questions about this, and we're going to get there in a few minutes. David, what is the current state of development? What is the hour? Where is the project right now as of June 2017?
Yeah, so we put the message out there 2 months ago, and we're starting to gather people together. We've got some funding, but we need a lot more. So right now we're looking for people who know how to do and have got experience of raising significant sums of money. And we're about to get ourselves registered as an official charity, so we can apply for charitable grants from organizations who support concepts like these. And really it's about starting to build cohesion and support, not just within the medical community, but from patients as well, and your own clients who understand the need for this and the benefit of this approach. And that healing can be so much quicker, and that it can happen almost instantaneously if we hold this space for radical well-being and spontaneous recovery. So
can Can you explain to the audience what crowdfunding means? That's one of these new internet words that may not be entirely clear. How is the World Heritage Healing Center project financed?
Yeah, it's really recognizing that, by ourselves we may not have much financial firepower, but if we all get together and we all give what we can, actually we've got huge financial firepower. And it doesn't have to impact you personally, but if you contribute what you can, you'll get way more back, because you'll have a massive shift in the consciousness, and the rate at which we can generate a change is much bigger. So crowdfunding just recognizes that actually by joining together, so the crowd becoming one person or speaking with one voice, we can generate change and raise funds much quicker than if we all think, oh, we've only got a little bit so we can't contribute. But if we all contribute our little bit, then the crowd aspect of it will fund the project much quicker.
So the crowdfunding is a publicly accessible and available donation website organized by, in your case, it's Just Giving, that where anybody can donate from, I think, does it have to be $1 or can it be less than $1?
I think you have to do $1, but yeah, there's no real kind of lower limit as such. So if $1 is all that you want and can give, then we will gratefully take it, and you will get $1 and more worth of value from your contribution, and it will be gratefully received.
So basically, the crowdfunding aspect here of the World Heritage Healing Center is that anybody can contribute, not just in money. Of course, that is the current state right now, that we need to raise enough money to get the structure of the charity and to get the planning phase for the building and so forth going. But the current state is the raising the funds through crowdfunding.
Yeah, and contributing what we can. So, some people are very financially restricted, which is fine, but they have a lot of skills which they can offer. And we do need a lot of people's life experience skills and the skills which they currently use for their employment or other hobbies. Because of the scale of the project and the ambition, there's a role for everything involved in it. And if you can't think exactly what job title you may have, but know that you want to be involved and that you've got something that you want to contribute, then please get in contact, because we'll find something for you.
Yes, and at the when we come to the end of the webcast here, we're going to have a vacancy list. So every webcast will kind of end with the kind of positions that we need at the current state. Here is a question that helps us to bridge to this next keyword here, longevity. Has the particular site been chosen for this center, for this massive center yet?
It hasn't, and actually one of the people we're looking for is someone who really understands ley lines and also the energetic flows in the earth, because we want to put it somewhere which is most conducive to healing. And if we can find the point which is most conducive for healing, wherever that is in the world, we're not going to be limited by having to stick to one particular geographical location because it makes sense from a transport links as they currently stand. Because of the scale of the project, we'll be integrating all of that stuff, so building new infrastructure to support everything else that's needed to build a structure of this scale.
Okay, cool. Thank you for answering that question. So one of the major points that you're trying to bring across, and that is the longevity, the legacy that is being created here for future generations. Could you expand a little bit on that? So
one of the issues about longevity actually is that the number one factor in health and longevity is strong, loving relationships, and recognizing the importance of this in everything that we do. So there are places in the world, they're called blue zones, where people have a life expectancy of 20 years or more longer than the national average for that location. And it's because they embody this strong, loving relationships principle. They spend time with the people who matter most to them, their friends and their family, and they invest in those relationships. So if we start to change our perspective away from, what I can take for myself from a financial point of view, to what I can give in terms of relationships, and we find that you start to benefit on a personal level much more, because when you give, you also get. When you have kind thoughts about other people, you're also being kind to yourself, and the reverse is also true, and it feels good just being kind. So that's one aspect of it, and the other thing is to start living from this heartfelt sense of what the right thing to do is. And this heart-centered approach, our relationship not just to jobs and money and other people, but everything, is all centered in the heart. And one of the reasons we have so much heart disease in Western society is because it's not heart-centered. We don't always follow the right thing to do or our gut feeling, and we overload our brain, and then we end up with loads of mental health issues because the brain can't cope taking on the roles of all the other brains, the computer head brain, as it were. So we're going beyond just building a big physical center or networks of center, but changing our attitude and the way in which we live to a heartfelt sense of doing the right thing, which means taking responsibility, not just for our own health, but the way we conduct ourselves in business and acting with integrity. And healthcare is a business, and it's a very profitable business, which isn't heart-centered for a lot of people, as in they're trying to extract as much financial value from their patients, whilst not necessarily giving them the best care from the heartfelt sense of what's the right thing to do for the patient, because they may be getting a kickback, maybe from a direct financial contribution, or being taken out for dinner or a round of golf or some other kickback. It is bribery and corruption, but in a slightly concealed way, so it doesn't appear that way. But it's there, and it's rife throughout medical practice as it currently stands. So we can't honestly say that a lot of doctors in the US practice from a heartfelt sense of what is right. They may prescribe you a medication or recommend a particular prosthesis in a joint replacement based on a kickback coming from a particular company. And
so how do you think you can generally avoid this? But what do you think makes the big difference here within the World Heritage Healing Center idea?
So it's the whole paradigm of medical practice. So as soon as you start to realize that the body is not just a system of parts which you can take out and replace, but actually there's an energetic link on levels above the physical. You can't just take out someone's liver and replace it with a new liver and not affect the rest of the body or the rest of their energetic being. And it may not be the best thing for them to have done anyway, if you appreciate the roles of the other levels. And actually, by working on the other levels, you may get rid of the need for the liver replacement if you recognize that the body has other levels. So, or the human is not just a body, but a human energetic being of many other levels, which may be far more significant than just the physical, which we can see and touch and taste and all the rest of it with our senses. In fact, we're actually mostly energy. We're not much physical, but that's just what we can sense with our physical senses. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see and hear what Jeff has to say about the current medical staffing and attitude, because from my perspective, there's lots which can change, but he's actually worked in staffing. So
yeah, it's a tough one, because I would say for the most part, the most people that I worked with, and I worked mostly with nurses and doctors, staffing them for various locations and assignments and so forth, and some other professions, but those are the two main ones. The people do care, but they just don't grasp the other levels like you're talking about. So if you're going to, the vision of this, which I know it is to open up to other levels, the people themselves have to have that development, because the best people I've met who were phenomenal nurses or phenomenal doctors had done a lot of personal growth work themselves, and they had the most success. You know, their patients came to them and had massive change, and they sometimes didn't need these, like you said, liver replacements or whatever, because the conscious level of the healer, of the practitioner, was so well developed. And I'm not talking that they were enlightened or anything, but they were developed to the point where they actually had heart and they had integrity, that their level of success with their patients was much higher. And even if the success didn't reach the level the patient wanted, the patient typically accepted it better. So it's really the big thing I see with the years I have in staffing, is that the need is for personal growth on not only the paradigm itself, which is what you're going for and what we're doing with this whole process, but it's also teaching the staff. Because, you know, and you really see this, like, you know, in the counseling profession. I mean, I was shocked in classes that roughly 70 to 80% of the counseling students had never had talk therapy, had never done hardly any personal growth other than read a few books, you know, and then they're going to go out and try to help people who have issues with dementia, or have issues with reality testing, with depression, and with ups and downs of all kinds of issues with trauma. It just doesn't work that way. So really the key is, besides obviously changing the paradigm of the health itself, is what you've talked about with me, David, is, you know, you've also got to add in education and teach and teach the staff themselves, the people who do the healing, to enhance their consciousness, to enhance their awareness, to enhance all those things. Because the people who have that just naturally, or they've done enough personal growth themselves, I knew if I sent that person on an assignment, that because of their talent and because of their ability and their conscious level, that they would do a better job tenfold. Because they not necessarily, now usually they also had a very high level of understanding because they had a passion about their job. But even if they didn't, like there was some young nurses that I placed, it was their understanding of themselves and understanding of people that allowed them to be an effective healer. And the other issue too that I saw, and you probably both know this, you know, as well, David, is that there is a lot of issues right now in the staffing, or in the medical staff, with some psychological damage and compassion fatigue and addiction issues, all kinds of stuff. So if that is addressed and people understand that, and also the view of how life is looked at, which in a Western medical field is typically, if there's a heartbeat and there's a brainwave, we got to try to keep it going. If that could be changed a bit to see a more broader perspective, then you have an opportunity to really do a lot of change and a lot of healing.
Yeah. So working on the medical paradigm from the medical perspective is one thing, and holding the space for a greater recovery than we might expect. So letting go of expectations of what is possible and holding the space for a full recovery, not just based on what you've seen before, but like having the space for that person to become the best version of themselves that they can be, and not having ego interfere with the outcome, which is what I really like with the Trunamics project, because we recognize the different levels from the physical therapy perspective. So Lynn, I don't know if you want to come in here and talk a little bit more about your Trunamics program.
Well, sure, I guess if you want to. This isn't self-promotion, I'm talking theory. I think the reason that I got into that, or had that idea, is like I was talking about realizing, you know, and one of the principles I learned back when I used to teach Body Talk was that was so great about that philosophy is the whole diagnostic realm, you know, is so outdated. I think in emergency medicine, diagnosing things to find out what to save somebody's life in the moment is very important, but, you know, otherwise diagnosing and looking at health problems means, well, here's what we found on your blood test to your problem, here's the label we give you, and here's how we treat it. But, you know, liver disease, heart disease, cancer, myofascial pain, I mean, there's thousands of different causes for that stuff, and we're never going to develop a drug to cure that. I mean, we spent trillions of dollars to do it, and that's not how the body works. But if we looked at it as opposed to, well, something's wrong with this part, as opposed to what's wrong with the system, and not what's wrong, but what do we need to do as a priority to fix it, I found that philosophy like amazing. But then again, I think we really, you know, it's easy to get caught up in, you know, our own egos, like you were talking about earlier. everybody's technique is the best, it's better than everybody else's, you know, and you hear these egos on and on and on. And the way God designed us, right, he designed us on 3 levels. And the Vedic philosophy looks at it as Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Christian perspective is physical, you know, Holy Spirit as the sun, and then the Holy Spirit is the functional, and God is the energetic or wisdom parts of the body, or belief systems, emotions, whatever you want to look at. And just, you know, I've been lucky enough to travel around the world and teach and look at professional athletes and different people and diseases, and to learn from some really great minds on the planet. And there's some amazing practitioners doing things, and I think maybe God gives everybody their ego so that they believe in themselves enough to go out and teach their work. But you know, the thing is, every level of the body is valid. And, you know, because when we're doing, you know, structural body work, we're affecting the physiology and the emotional level. When we're treating the functional levels, right, the functional biomechanics, we're changing the energetic chi level and the physical level. And I think that, you know, knowing which level to treat on and jump back and forth and realize that every profession is valid. And even though there's a tremendous amount of misinformation and outdated information on how the body works, I think that, you know, I wanted to start a program in Trunamics where all of my classes were taught on that level, but not to say, hey, here's my stuff, here's what's better, but to show some basics and turn people out, you know, to who the masters are. And because everybody's got a piece to this puzzle, and that's what I love about the World Heritage Healing Center, right? And if we can all just say, hey, my stuff's great, so is yours, but there's a truth about the body, and the truth never changes, but the lenses through which we look at the body and how we discover it is always going to change. That's why, you know, when the big trend is looking at science and talking about how old the earth is, and, you know, and or things like that, and that opinion changes every 2 years because we learn something else. And so the point being is the science is real and the body's real and the truth is real, but understanding how to work with it, I think, will always evolve and involve better minds than we have. That's why a lot of energetic techniques that were big and strong 10 or 15 years are really kind of outdated and don't work. I mean, they still work well, but there's others that work very, very quickly and very, very fast. And I think combining that with a tool to where we can make sure our intuition and our facts are all on the same page to go is where it needs to go. So looking at a healthcare modality or philosophy that includes everybody and respects them, as opposed to, you know, going back to the whole competition and you know, I have to prove that I'm better than you and outdate you to make you wrong or be better than you. That just doesn't really have a place in healthcare anymore and getting better. You know, I mean, people need to get better through support and through love and through the truth, and everybody working on that plane. And that doesn't mean that people can't have their specialties. We need that. But I think the training is to know when to pull somebody else in, or to learn those skills yourself so that you can address it, so that our clients actually have that feeling of wholeness on a psychological level. You know, they're in touch with their creator so that the spiritual levels can be there. They have something to format their lives to and their health. That's kind of, I think, where we have to go to get people better and realize we're all on the same team.
Sorry, can I say there's one other crucial factor which we haven't mentioned yet, and that is about personal responsibility for health, and realizing that unless we're ready to let go of our own issues and blocks and belief systems, we're never going to get to the root of the physical pain and dysfunction and tension that we're experiencing in the body. So the role of the patient is no longer just to be done to by the doctor or the practitioner, but actually take responsibility for where they are right now with their own symptoms. And when they're ready to shift at that level, then the physical symptoms can shift very quickly. So if we move away from doctor is this godlike figure who's the one who's got all the answers and I just have to go to the doctor and he'll fix me, because we know that that doesn't always work, and we move towards a model in which the patient uses the skills of the doctor to help him shift, but actually he is the one who is responsible for his own health care or her own health outcome from an intervention. So
yeah, David, I just want to add something to that. I think that you are absolutely right, and I think the critical mass has been reached for that, because, you know, if our healthcare providers are supposed to be our healthcare providers and they're not healthy, what does that say? You know, it's like I wouldn't go to my pool cleaner to ask him how to invest in stocks. I mean, if I'm going to learn how to be a millionaire, I'm going to go to a millionaire and talk to him about investing, right? I mean, that's, if you've never embodied it and understand it, I think it's kind of hard to be able to tell people how to be healthy if you've never been that way. And in this country, you look at all of the arguments over healthcare, and our healthcare, everybody's been so brainwashed to think that that's about having insurance. But it's not about taking personal responsibility for the health. I mean, the whole joke about diabetes and all this stuff, I mean, everybody knows how that's reversible, and if you clean up your diet and exercise, we've seen it thousands of times, but that's never mentioned. It's about, it goes back to money and can you afford your insurance? Well, you know, that doesn't change our healthcare problem. Our healthcare problem is that people don't know how to take care of their own health. They don't have any tools to take care of their own health, and they're being misled and advertised that they just need a pill, that their godlike doctor you were talking about will give them the answer, and they don't have to do anything but just keep eating and not exercising and not meditating and being self-aware, and they'll get better. It's really a farce, and it's an interesting time to watch the misinformation out there. So I think you're 100% right on that self-responsibility on every level for health.
So that the shift in paradigm here, as understanding ourselves as a healthy being, is really from being healed to self-healing, to really stepping up into a place where I understand that I am, as a person, as the patient, am part of the healing process. It is not just externalized, neither to the people who treat me, nor is my body externalized from me. I cannot separate that from another. I have to see myself as part of the entire process.
Well, the biggest part, actually. You have to be the biggest part of it. Yeah.
But that's one of the issues in the current healthcare system, is that the person itself, the heart of the person, what they're feeling, what they've just experienced, what they're going through, all these things are separated from the actual condition. So that the paradigm shift that is needed here is to include all these different aspects. And you, Lynn, and David and Jeff, you all mentioned this, is to include the person as a whole into the process. Not to just, I mean, we've just had a case of someone who got delivered to the emergency room. Nobody ever asked that person a single question about what this person had just gone through, where he emotionally stands, and what the overall situation is. Not a single time, and this person was close to death. So this is some of these things that we see here as the major issue when it comes to efficient healthcare.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add to that too, I think is funny, is even, you know, we talk about healers and all that, and I even think that saying that I'm a healer is disempowering to my patient, because there's nothing I can give them, right? Them getting better is between them and God. I'm giving them information. I'm not healing anything. Their body is the healer. And so we're so conditioned to run around and say, fix me, heal me, do this. Like, well, I can't, but you can heal yourself. And it's not that hard if you have the right information, whether we give it to them energetically or whatever. And I think just empowering patients and even practitioners in what is possible with that consciousness, and letting them have their power back. That's like, oh, I can heal myself, or, oh yes, I actually can give this person the information in a session to where their body can turn on and fix itself. That's where it's at, I think, you know?
And David, you said this very beautifully earlier. You said creating the space. That to me is the part that resonates here the most. And it includes aspects that you brought in, Lynn, you know, with practitioners working together, with letting go of all this old paradigm of dog eats dog, or competition, or trying to be better, or trying to prove something, or even trying to take credits for a person's healing process. It's about providing the space here and encouraging a person to change the way he or she looks at the healing process itself. From an energy work viewpoint, if I may put this in here, or add this here, we always emphasize the fact that healing is a twofold process. It's removing the whatever causes or whatever seems to cause a certain condition, and then strengthening the system from within to deal with that. All right, so it's not just removing the symptom or removing the seeming cause. It's also about educating the patient, involving the patient in and you mentioned all these things before, in making life changes, and making and changing their own approach to their health and to their body, and not just their body, as we know, because we understand today that a lot of the physical conditions are really just the manifestations of less dense issues or imbalances or blocks in the person. So very often here, as in our energy healing profession, we end up with people who actually have gone through a physical healing, a strictly physical healing process, and yet they either experience recurring or chronic conditions, or they develop slight variations of their original conditions, because the root cause was never addressed. So yeah. For us here as energy healers, we actually see, Lynn, you brought in the 3 levels sort of the physical existence. As energy healers, and with the abilities that we have to see, and also to train other people to see imbalance in a person's energy field, we actually regard a person in a 5-fold way. We see them in their physical, in their emotional, in their mental, in their spiritual, and in their energetic form. And these are sort of the different layers of our energy body that become denser and denser the closer we get to the physical. So the physical for us is just sort of the end of the line. All right, if somebody comes up with a physical problem, then we know this has been going on for a long time, somewhere else, where it has formed and sort of condensed on an energetic level. And that, in our view, is something that is completely unaddressed nowadays. And like you said, some of the energy healing modalities that came out 15, 20 years ago were kind of cool back then because it was kind of a new understanding. But the way we see this today is that even within the energy aspect of a person, and this has nothing to do with woo-woo, this is all based on quantum mechanical effects and energetic dynamics. These can go even much further than most people can actually imagine right now. So there can be conflicts that are going on within a person's energy field that don't seem to have anything to do with the physical condition, and yet they are the energetic cause for the physical manifestation.
I would add to that too. I mean, I think the whole concept of consciousness and downward causation has been out there for a long, long time, because it certainly does. When you're looking at that, you know, every layer of the body has so many different layers, but it does start, you know, as a thought or a projection from somebody else. And the funny thing about the science in this is there's so much scientific research that's been done. In fact, I was spending some time in Germany with James Oshman about a year and a half ago, and just sit there and talk to him about his books, you know, and how everything's been proven over and over and over again for 80 years about quantum physics and energy medicine and electron. The scientific basis is so strong and so deep, it's kind of laughable when people even question that we can work on the quantum level, you know, because you can't go that's the deepest level we can go to get things going as far as what we understand right now. But yeah, that energy level it's just a matter of vibration and information, and it's all there. All the proof and all that it starts and comes in it should be common sense. Unfortunately, it's not to most people in the world.
I 100% agree with you on that, Lynn, and you said something earlier too about the critical mass. For me as an ex-scientist who's always tried to find a way to prove that this is reality, that the energetic reality is linked, and maybe even at the foundation of any disease or disorder, has led me to understand better today why, even though all this scientific research is supporting these things that we're talking about, has led me to understand now that that science itself needs a paradigm shift. So for me as a practitioner, I've been working in this field and protocoling annually every single session, and I use scientific method to teach, but I can still not prove that the healing success was based on the energy work, simply because of how the scientific method is defined. All right. So on the other hand, I know a lot of scientists that are doing research in this, and their problem is that they don't have enough data. So the shift that is needed here, the paradigm shift that is needed here, in order to bridge this gap between the classical science that we are dealing with today and quantum mechanical, or it's not even just quantum mechanical. There's a way larger energetic dynamics in effect, and you mentioned those as well. They have to do with the understanding of human consciousness and so forth. Is that subjectivity needs to be brought back into the scientific model, because when it comes to health and well-being, it is not an objectively measurable state. So we are dealing with a subjective perception of a person here, and that needs to be defined, but it cannot be defined in a way that a current scientific methodology dictates us. So that's where, in my view, where this gap is, and this has been sort of the core of my work here in those last 15 years, to provide enough data and to provide enough reproducible results that can feed that kind of conclusion. So this is what we're looking here when we're looking at paradigm shift in the medical and the health understanding and the education. We're looking at a whole new level of approach, not just teaching a person how an energy field looks like, or those rather secular things, but to actually go in and internalize all these things and learn how to use intuition, how to use these unseen, subtle sensations that a practitioner as well as the patient can contribute to the healing process. So we encourage people to learn what we call this inner lexicon of sensations, where we ask the person how they're feeling. We're not telling them how they feel. We're asking them, does this feel true to you? Does this feel good to you? Does this feel right to you? And that is a whole different approach that can, at this point of controversy in the scientific community, cannot easily be resolved. We kind of have to create that on our own. This is sort of what I see here, the potentiality that I see here with the World Heritage Healing Center, is to create a community of scientists, of doctors, of practitioners, of teachers, who can come together and say, we're not out there to prove that this works, okay? We don't need to prove this anymore. We're just creating our own science here, and we can prove that it works. So this is kind of like where I'm standing here with the the integrity and the education aspect of this, because when we say, okay, you have to train medical staff, you have to train or educate the patient, we are actually looking at a generational shift that has to happen. In fact, we're looking at something that has to happen in childhood already. David, sorry for taking over here. Maybe you want to go back and introduce to us or expand a little bit on how we are intending to integrate technology, not just theories, but also hands-on technology and educational models into the project.
Yeah, so technology is going to be really useful for helping people to bridge the gap from what they think is possible to what is actually possible. So we can show people what chi feels like, what energy feels like, or what that electromagnetic or static feeling that you can generate in yourself by meditating or practicing qigong. We can show you that feeling with a machine, and then you can know what chi feels like, and then you recognize it when you manage to meditate in the right state and achieve that. So you can direct the flow of blood or whatever other energies, other system functions are needed to a specific area with your own focus in order to have a self-healing experience. Or if you can't meditate with a strong enough focus, someone else can do that on you. But the technology is really important for bridging the gap and showing you, well, we can use specific wavelengths of infrared to generate stem cells in you. We don't have to do a bone marrow aspiration or suck out the fat, spin that, and then re-inject the stem cells locally. And then if we miss the area by a centimeter or something, you're not going to get the stem cells where they're needed, and you're going to have a poor outcome. Whereas if you can generate the energy specifically with your focus or with the machine to help you, you can have such a stronger and more accurate healing response. So there's a massive role for pulsed electromagnetic frequency machines, these oscillating energy machines, the infrared therapy machines, all of these technologies which have been around and which we've known about for quite some time, but have been very much under the radar because drugs have been given such a higher priority in our medical model. But if everything is vibrating and moving at the same time, then we can stimulate it from a frequency perspective. We don't have to work at the chemical level, we can work at the level underneath it, the electromagnetic, or we can stimulate that with our focus. So there's a role in technology in driving this paradigm forward, but ultimately we don't want to have to rely on technology or some external intervention. We want to be able to create the state of healing within ourselves and shift those blocks to personal growth and healing by ourselves without the need for a healthcare practitioner, because that's ultimately what the healthcare practitioner is doing, helping to shift a belief block. So that's where we're going with that. And I know, Lynn, you've done a lot of work with therapies along these lines, and you're a rep for a couple of companies as well, aren't you?
I mean, as far as electricity, and yeah, you've been using that. Yeah, I've been, I happen to work with a lot of, athletes or people that need to get better in just a matter of days. I've always kind of looked for something that helped, and I'm not a big fan of machines at all. My dad was kind of an acupuncture researcher and used a lot of microcurrent, to treat trigger points and acupuncture stuff, 40 years ago, and grew up with that. But I had a machine introduced to me about 4 years ago. It's called the Avasia microcurrent machine, and through was it First Alternative Therapies has it, and I had a huge keloid scar on my back, and I've had it treated with body talk and acupuncture and all this stuff, and it wasn't working. And then within 4 minutes, it was completely flat. And I was just blown away because they found a way to build a microchip with a sinusoidal waveform in it, which is the same side of energetic wave our body communicates with through our heart, and then it locks on to, every frequency in the body's been mapped out. So what it does is you can pick the frequency and run it, and it just brings the quantum particles into alignment. That's why it can reorganize scar tissue and inflammation and, you know, downregulate nerves fast. And that being said, I think, you know, all we are when we're looking at anti-inflammatories and all that, it's just a bunch of electrons, basically, is how a lot of that works. And our bodies can be so depleted of chi that sometimes we just need chi, but we need the frequency and the voltage to be a little bit stronger to really help that person energetically come back. And it's made a, you know, a huge difference in you know, working with people. Everybody that uses frequency specific microcurrent or those Avazi machines, I mean, they have full practices because, you know, reversing, you know, sclerosis in the liver and all that, it's just another form of energy medicine, but it's more specifically targeted. And it's out there. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of machines, but there will be technology soon where we're going to be shifting consciousness with. I mean, I know it'll go that way, and I'm excited for that day. But, you know, for now, there's a lot of great lasers and a lot of things out there. I don't think they're enough to have a practice on standalone, but for certain treatments, I mean, when we're looking at frequency and vibration and information, it still comes down to voltage. So, you know, that's it.
Yeah,
there's stuff out there that really helps people.
Yeah, from my perspective, I've seen some really exciting things from pulsed electromagnetic frequency stuff. So, you know, really bad fractures, which would normally take 6 to 8 weeks to heal, healing in 9 days. So. Yeah. Our understanding of what's possible and the rate of healing is very skewed towards the drug-based, and you know, people are still talking about icing to you know, get rid of inflammation, but icing is the thing which is going to slow down the healing response. You need the inflammation stage. You've got to get into and out of it as quickly as possible, rather than delaying it or keeping yourself in the in that inflammatory stage by slowing down that inflammation stage. So if people take one thing away from this whole podcast, please stop icing all your sprained ankles, because you're slowing down the rate at which you're healing those things. And that's another example of misinformation by the media about medical practice and how we use it on ourselves.
Yeah,
so that's a good example for that we're actually dealing with misconceptions here and conceptual misunderstandings. You know, that what we're trying to accomplish here is to create an open source platform that allows us to bring all these different technologies, to bring all these different modalities and treatments and applications from all different directions, Eastern medicine, Western medicine, native medicine, indigenous medicine, herbalism, acupuncture, and so forth, all of that together, so that we can actually create a whole picture here of what is needed for a person, depending on where they're at a moment.
And also, sorry. I was just going to say, and holding the space as well for no intervention. Sometimes, actually, we don't need to do anything to the patient. We just need to hold the space for them to get better. And we can slow the healing process down by intervening, because we feel that we have to do something for the patient. Whereas actually, maybe it's just got to come from the patient, and there's nothing more.
And strengthening the confidence. The confidence in the person to actually believe. One of the things that we can see in current healthcare, no matter where you look in the world, that is almost counterproductive right now, is that the person is being told that they're helpless, that they're powerless, that they can't do anything, and that they have to completely give up their power. And that is, I think, one of the most empowering things that a new paradigm of health can provide to not just an individual person, but to the collective itself.
Yeah. So if we were to summarize this, I guess we're moving away from a fear-based practice of having to be seen to be doing something for or to the patient, towards a love-based practice of just doing the right thing, or holding the space for the right thing to happen in that patient, for that person on their soul's journey right now in this lifetime. So practicing from the heartfelt sense of what is right and meeting the other person as a human, energetic being, not as a robot which we can replace a part in and then send off on the conveyor belt of life. So,
so David, as we're coming to the end of our webcast here, could you give us a list of people or professions or enthusiastic contributors that we are in need of at this current state?
And enthusiasm is the right word, because if we have to motivate people to get involved, then they're not buying into the ethos of just giving from the heartfelt sense of what's right to do, because then they'll have to be almost forced to do what we think is the right thing. But actually, when we work from enthusiasm, we do the right thing because it's the felt sense of what is right. So that being said, if you feel it's right for you, we need a charity secretary right now who has experience of running large organizations or running large charities, and navigating. To begin with, is the English charitable setup, because we're very close to having that done as an organization, but we need to have that, the administration and the running side of it, the practical side of it. We need help with that. So a project manager would help too, to direct it, and fundraising. Someone with experience of raising funds in the nicest possible way, but we do need money. And then a website developed that holds a directory of practitioners who are already working from this ego-less perspective, doing what they feel is the right thing from that heart-centered state, and not feeling that they have to hold on to a client just because the client came to them first, but is willing to refer out to other modalities and other practitioners because that might be the best thing for the client. So we need a directory of practitioners already working, and we need to put that online so people can access this straight away. And then the other thing is, if you have any ideas, something which you think we're missing, or that we need to start on straight away, please get in contact. And if you want to volunteer, everyone is involved in the project from a giving perspective in the pure sense, because they're not expecting any return immediately. But everyone will be paid according to the value which they add to the project. So don't think that, oh, I'm going to only pay an hourly rate, because if you work for an hourly rate, you only give the value which you think that hourly rate is worth. Whereas if you just give because you're giving everything from an enthusiasm point of view, the whole project will move forward so much quicker, and you as an individual are going to grow so much quicker too. And part of the project is to help personal development as well. So it's going to push us. We're going to find our limiting beliefs. We're going to clear them. We're going to hopefully deal with a lot of our own health issues or pain and tensions which are showing up as belief system blocks. So I probably missed out loads of positions just there. So if anyone else wants to chime in right now, but we'll also put a list up on the website of people with specific skills that we're looking for.
So yes, we've come to the place here of our webcast. If you have a burning question at this point or a comment, you can raise your hand or you can text your question. You will also be able to ask questions afterwards. The webcast will be published on YouTube and Facebook. There's a commentary there that allows you to respond directly. So if you're just listening or watching this recording here right now, please ask. Please continue to ask. Please continue to comment. This helps us to further develop and further improve this project that is supposed to be a project for all humanity, not just for us. I want to thank here our panel today. Lynn, thank you so much. A wonderful contribution from you, and we are so proud to have you in the project. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. It's great.
It was wonderful having you here, Jeff, as always. Jeff's sitting next to me, so it's been great to have you here. But thank you for your and David, thank you very much for having me on the show here, since you were the founder of all of us, and in the name of everybody, I think I can thank you for coming forward with this wonderful idea, for having the boldness, for having the courage to do the things that so many of us can already feel. We can already feel that this is reality. We just never had the guts to come out with this. So big thank you to you, David, for bringing all this into the physical here. And the next webcast in our webcast series here is same time, 9 p.m. British summertime, which is a GMT +1. So if you want to join us, share the recording that we are producing here from this webcast here today. Ask friends or people that you think would be interested in hearing more about the future of health education. We're going to be diving a little deeper into virtual health reality and how we think that we have to approach health education in the future, and how we think we're going to do this. So there are some very specific concepts that we have already developed, and we hope to have an equally exciting panel. I hope you're coming by, and in the name of everybody here, I would like to thank you for your attention, for your time,